Hello, everyone, and welcome to Placing Faces, the show where we sit down with some of the most influential casting directors in all of Hollywood and across the entertainment spectrum. I am your host, Charlie Chappell, and I hope that you are keeping healthy and well, both physically and mentally, in these crazy, crazy times that we're living in. Today, we get to chat with multiple-time nominee and Artios Award winner, Susan Shopmaker. Susan is awesome. Period. Full stop. With over 20 years of feature film casting experience, she has worked on projects like John Cameron Mitchell's Hedwig and the Angry Inch, 2016's Imperium, 2003's Party Monster, John Slattery's God's Pocket, Frank and Lola, Andrew Neel's King Kelly and Goat, and Michael Franco's Chronic, a Cannes Award winner and Spirit Award nominee, just to name a few. Like I said, Susan is awesome, so we're just going to jump right in. Please enjoy, and I hope that you learn as much as I did. So over the course of this show, one of my favorite parts is studying all of these casting careers. And yours has been a lot of fun because a lot of the movies that you have under your belt are exactly the kind of things that I want to be making as a filmmaker. You know, the deep thought drama of First Reformed and the psychosexual Frank and Lola and Imperium and Goat, these socially aware, interesting stories. I'm curious, how is it that you choose projects and what kind of criteria you have for selecting projects?
That's a good question. A while ago, I made money doing casting commercials. Mm-hmm. And the film people, I don't think, really knew that was happening. And people and so eventually people started sending me scripts, and I was able to actually pick and choose projects.
Okay.
So from the start, I didn't have to, at the beginning of my career, take anything I didn't want to do. So as strange as the resume looks, it was all by choice. And I like to say I made my bed, God damn it, and now I have to sleep in it. But I think primarily life is tricky. Mm-hmm. And people's lives have a lot of layers and complications, and I think those are the movies that I'm drawn to as a casting director. I also like to look at projects and say, if I were an actor, I would want to do this, or this is going to be an amazing job for an actor. And so a lot of things were chosen because of that.
And that is based on receiving a script? How do you come across?
Always started with the script. I mean, it's changed. The business has changed, which we touched on earlier before we were recording. But primarily with me, it has always been the script. And then secondary and sometimes first, it's the relationship. If you have a relationship with the director already or with the producers. And if you don't, often it's the hope of, this will move forward. This will be a great experience and we'll move forward. That doesn't always happen, but that's the intent.
Yeah. Well, what is it in a script? I mean, it sounds like if it's exciting for an actor, how do you gauge that? Did you ever act yourself, or is it just?
No, I studied acting in college, but so yes, I did, yeah. But I guess you just have to put yourself into the thing and say, would I want to do this? Or what makes this interesting? What makes this dynamic interesting? And oftentimes it's the director or the cinematographer who make it interesting, but you have to see the kernel of something in the script. You really do. Mm-hmm. Or I do. I read a lot. I read an awful lot, and so not scripts, other things, and so So I'm drawn to good material. Mm-hmm. I think I always have been. It might not be material for everyone, but
it is good material. I mean, that is one of the things that I have taken note of is. All of the movies that I watched of yours and the ones that I didn't watch that I have on my list to watch.
I haven't seen half of them.
Are roles that I would love to play. are characters and things that they're going through that stretch a human being. Frank and Lola are two of my favorite actors out there right now, Michael Shannon and Imogen Poots, are incredible actors, and to pit them against one another or with one another, and again, there are so many things that actors kind of get stuck in the flow of doing. So to see these sorts of things that are, sure, they're a little bit on the outer edges. Imperium is a great example of that. Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, playing an FBI agent who goes undercover with neo-Nazis and white supremacists. It's a really interesting story. They're simple stories.
That was before its time.
That was way before its time. I was so excited to see that movie when I first saw the trailer of it, just because I mean, you know how to, in Northwest Arkansas, there are skinheads, there are neo-Nazis in places, there are, the Klan still exists where I grew up. So I'm fascinated by those stories, and to see, Toni Collette opposite of Daniel Radcliffe, who was incredible in the movie. I'm curious what makes you care about a project, to want to take care of that project, to be a steward of it.
Well, again, it's material, and then of course it's the relationship. If you don't know the director ahead of time, then it's the relationship that you build fairly quickly. You have to rely on one another. And so and selfishly, if I feel like I'm being taken care of, and that means if I'm being heard, then I am apt to pick up the phone at 4 a.m. if you're calling me. And in the past, I think, and this is a psychological thing, in the past, I think I tried to stay the course with projects that may not have been deserving of that kind of attention. And I guess I tried to stay the course because I wanted them to get it, or you can't say like me more because it's not high school, but that's the feeling you have.
Sure.
And I think it's only somewhat lately where I have come to terms with that not every personality clicks. And there are those projects that you end up you follow through, you never turn your back on them, but they are not as emotionally rewarding. I don't know if I answered your question.
Absolutely. What brought about that realization and that understanding for you?
I think it's probably, and I think, I apologize, I've not listened to your show, but it may be
not at all.
Something else that you've heard from people is the realization after a while is like, oh yeah, they're just not going to get this. And if you beat your head against the wall enough times, eventually you stop beating your head against the wall. You just sort of say, yeah, okay, this isn't going to work. So now I'll just, again, I'll stay the course, but the emotional draw to it, you have to step away from.
It's serenity prayer in my mind. Is the first thing that kind of comes up. God grant me the serenity to know the things that I can't change.
Yeah, it takes a while to learn that lesson, I think.
I think it really does, and I think that it's honestly good to hear that from a casting director. Not to say that I haven't heard something similar from casting directors, and not that I'm reveling in your sorrow, but that everybody's going through this on both sides of the camera in that casting room, from the PA to everyone.
Yeah, but actors, why didn't I get the job? I could have done this, I could have done that. No, actually, you didn't get it because, that it had nothing to do with you. That's the refrain lately. You didn't. Whatever you did in the room was as good as it could possibly be. And, they went a different way, and that is a truth often. That is the truth. You can't change it. So
the world of casting commercials, how did you transition from the commercial world and doing so many commercials to the independent feature world and all of the different things that you've done?
Honestly, it was just economic. The commercial world changed. I don't know what you know about commercials, but the world itself changed, and there just aren't. It's just a different beast now. And I don't want to say the bottom fell out, because that's not really true, but probably the bottom fell out in my business. And so I still do them. In fact, I'm prepping for one for tomorrow now. But and so it was out of necessity, like, now I really have to make a living doing film. And so.
Did the budgets just go down? What was it about?
I don't know. I don't really know. I think I have to, in all honesty, when I was doing them, I sort of didn't know how good I had it. Like, I don't really I think I didn't understand it. And, to make a day rate and to be doing 2 and 3 of these at a time in a small company, that's a fair amount of money coming in. And I think I just didn't get it. So I don't, so in not getting it, I was very much paying attention to the casting part of it, but I really wasn't paying that much attention to the business aspect of it.
Okay.
And so, but looking at commercials, looking at television, there aren't any, because everyone's streaming, they're just not there. And I think there are a lot of non-union commercials now, which changed the playing field. And that's my off the cuff impression. I don't know if I'm right or wrong.
So that transition was almost out of necessity, you say?
Yes. And then you get lucky. You do a movie that lots of people see that does well, or it sells. I can't really tell you. I don't have my resume in front of me, but there were several early on that, whether or not people now even know what they are, they did very well for me. They won awards at Sundance.
Just something that got your name in front of other people.
Yes, and so people started calling. Yeah.
I always like to talk about firsts with people. And you can tell me if you don't remember anything about this, but I want to talk about Alligator Eyes. It is your first credited feature on IMDb. Don't remember?
I don't. I think it was non-union. You know what I do remember? And I have to give credit. I think there was another casting director involved. I can't remember who it was. I don't think I can't remember his name. I don't think he's listed. I don't know anything. I don't remember. But I do know that he brought Uma Thurman in to the room. And she was a young model, and I was like, what? And so I do remember making that mistake.
Oh, that's great.
Very vividly. But that's the only thing that I can remember. I can't really remember anything. I apologize.
No need to apologize. I mean, this is a deep pull from 1990 that was, a drama romance thriller about a blind woman.
Yeah, I just don't. And there were movies, and then I would go on and do other jobs. It wasn't a straight shot of a career. So I don't. Well, I did a lot of casting early on, also for MTV, for promos and stuff. And so I would do these jobs, and then I would go and work retail or something. I mean, literally other jobs. So I went over many years. Alligator Eyes was 1990? Okay.
Alligator Eyes was 1990, yeah.
Hey, all right.
I mean, I show that you have, some extras casting and casting associate work before that.
Who the hell knows, yeah.
So one of the movies that I watched of yours that I knew literally nothing about, which is great, walking into all of your movies. I highly recommend, if anyone listening is looking up Susan's work, watch all of these without watching any of the trailers. It is worth it. I want to talk about Enchanted. Like I said, I walked into it completely blind. I thought it was just an animated Disney movie.
You've never seen it?
Never seen it, never heard of it. That was right around the time it came out was when I went off to college and started doing, college things. So I looped back around to it. After about 5 minutes, I was wondering what is going on here. This is just too Disneyfied. Susan did goat. What's happening here? And then poof, I get it. Spoiler alert, it's a story about a cartoon princess that gets transported to flesh and blood New York City as her Prince Charming tries to seek her out, all the while caught up in this non-cartoon romance with Patrick Dempsey, Mr. McDreamy. I know the script went through a ton of doctoring, multiple directors, including Rob Marshall and John Turteltaub. When, over the course of this 10-year process of getting this movie made, were you attached?
I wish I could say incredible things about I was attached from the beginning. Honestly, they shot in New York and they hired a New York casting director.
Okay.
So I really came on board well after the leads had been cast.
Okay.
The major leads, and I did pretty much everything else. I mean, again, that was a big job for me, and actually, I had a great time. I'm responsible for the little girl, and I'm responsible for just about everyone else, I think, in the movie, but not those leads.
The little girl was great.
She was adorable, and I have to give them major kudos for going with her. Because she was an honest kid. She was a real little girl.
Rather than being a Disney little girl.
Well, just didn't come from the world of tap dance. And
okay.
She was a real kid. She was adorable. So, yeah, that was a great experience, but that's the best I can give you on that.
What was it like working with Disney? Is there a difference in working with such a behemoth of a company compared to a lot of the other stuff you've done?
I feel like I had a really great experience, but they had a casting department and I answered to them, and there was, I think it was Kevin Lima was the director. Yeah. And answered to him, and it wasn't so different from casting anything else at the end of the day for me, but that's because I wasn't driving onto a lot every day and having to make lists and lists and lists. I was just casting.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are a ton of cameos in this one, too, from actresses from a lot of Disney musicals. You got Jodi Benson, who voiced Ariel. Yes. She plays Mr. McDreamy's assistant. You got Paige O'Hara, who starred as Beauty in Beauty and the Beast. She plays a soap opera character.
That was obviously a little Disney thing.
It was.
And I don't remember 100% how much I was involved in any of that. But that was very much, their thing. Obviously, those are their...
What did this movie do for you moving on in your career? Because it got a lot of attention. It was a different kind of Disney movie.
Not much.
No.
I don't know. I didn't go on and do a lot more studio pictures. Mm-hmm. I've done a few of the New York casting for studio pictures, some of which I took screen credits on and some of which I didn't. There were few of those. So economically, it may have done something for a while, but the kinds of movies that I'm quote unquote known for, if I'm known for anything, it's apples and oranges.
It kind of is, yeah.
Had a good experience, so I got nothing to say.
And that's kind of what I'm curious about, because when you're an orange person and you're given an apple product, I guess I'm curious, how do you handle that? Do you revel in it? Are you a little frightened of it?
But I'm frightened every day. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. It's like it can be a short film and it can be, something under $500,000 and on way on up. And I'm scared every day. And, you're scared every day that what is it? Someone's going to find out you don't know what you're doing. I don't know. But so they're all the same. If that makes any sense.
It does.
It's breaking down a script and it's still looking at characters and it's trying to figure out who's right. And trying to do some good deeds along the way for actors who you'd like to see get a break. Mm-hmm. And it's a whole lot of things. But with regard to me, certainly Disney, it was like any other job. I'm trying to answer your question, but kind of don't really have an answer because it's always it's about the work.
Yeah.
And so
I think that's a great answer. I don't think that there's more answer necessary to that because it's true. I think it is you're serving a story, you're serving the project, and no matter if you have $150 million or $80,000, you still have to do the work.
I used to say to people when I was getting kind of snappy, if people are like, you did an amazing job, and it's like, that movie was $350,000. Could you imagine what would happen if you gave me a movie that was $10 million? Mm-hmm. Because I think, like actors, I think we're pigeonholed. And so people think of Susan Shopmaker casting as this, entity that does these low budget indies. But imagine what I would do with money. and that's something I think people don't quite put together. That it is about the work. So if you're giving me $350,000 and look who's in that movie, imagine the breadth of work that you'll get from this office if we have more and more time. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I'm curious how you prevent yourself, or if it is possible to prevent that, or if it's even a desire to prevent the pigeonhole, because sometimes a pigeonhole is comfortable for people. Sometimes people land in doing that thing that they do very, very well, and that's their thing. Is it a desire of yours to be doing bigger? And
absolutely, but bigger with substance.
Right, of course. I can tell that is the first thing on the checklist. Is substance needs to be there. I don't think
me to do the superhero movie, and we'd all laugh. I think, but bigger with substance, absolutely. Mm-hmm. What fun!
Yeah.
And how to not be pigeonholed, I can't tell you. I can't answer that question. I literally don't know. Mm-hmm. Probably it's interesting. You said something to me about younger casting directors, and I earlier, and I paused, and I definitely had an opinion of what you said, but I think that they are the ones who will fight for maybe changing that. On the other hand, I think business is changing, and there may not be a fight to have, soon enough. Anyway, I think low budget independent filmmaking is changing. So
changing in the sense that there is just more being made.
No, I feel like there's less, but I think it's the stakes are higher. So the money comes from areas, and people need to, the stakes are higher. It's just different. Used to be that you could just cast a movie, and now you have to get a name, and you have to do this, and the process is more complicated.
Does that stifle you as a creative? Or can that? Can that be allowed to stifle you?
A lot of times people have good scripts, but they have to plug in someone who probably shouldn't be in the movie. And they're plugged in because they release a little bit of money. And sometimes whole casts are built like that. I fight it a lot. I don't always win. Mm-hmm.
How do you fight against that? Just presenting what you can present, and then
you do the best you can. I mean, you make lists and lists, but you can't. I'm not the financier. It's not my money. I can fight for someone who I think will be something down the line, and sometimes people pay attention to that, and sometimes they don't. Mm-hmm.
This is all I want to drill down so deep on this. I think it's difficult to find that niche, to find the work that you want to be doing. how did you find yourself in the independent film world and doing these kinds of really deep projects?
It's so funny. I was having this conversation yesterday with a friend who's a casting director, and I said, let's face it, we're all a bunch of weirdos. Like we're all total weirdos in high school. And she said, no, we weren't. And she started naming names, and she said that person was popular. And but I think there is this oddball mentality, and even when I was younger and I'd walk into a room, I was odd, and so the kinds of people who were drawn to that personality were the kinds of people that I wanted to hang out with, and I think that's how it happened. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. You found your community.
I have one story, and I don't know if I really remember it correctly, but it is my story, and I stand by it.
Great.
Killer Films called me in for a movie. I'm not going to name any names here, but I had recently had major spinal surgery, but I mean major. I had had half of the vertebrae in my neck taken out.
I was going to ask about that because that's on your Twitter. I have a full spinal fusion, so I'm with you. I know.
I have one through 6 are completely gone now. I had the second surgery 3 years ago. I'm completely metal in my neck now. That's why that's up there. I am a walking pre-existing condition, as are you. We have to talk about that because that's political. So I had this first surgery, and obviously I was completely high, and I had a job interview, and I can remember what I had on. I dressed myself. Okay, I had crazy paisley pants. It was dead of winter. And I had a purple and pink check coat. I had a green and yellow furry, like stuffed animal top hat, and a neck brace and a cane, and I think a bright purple sweater, which didn't match sort of anything, or hot pink or something. Like I looked like a 3-year-old. And I walked into this, I took a taxi, and maybe I had someone waiting for me outside like I was a little kid because I couldn't go myself. And I walked into the interview, and they looked at me and they said, "You're hired." So yeah, there's that too.
So you never know how you're going to get a job. Sometimes you just need to.
I think that's what I mean. I think water just, you seek your level, and that's a bit of it. Oddballs unite.
I think that's great, and I think it's a point that cannot come up enough in this industry, is that you do really have to find your tribe. You have to find the people that you work with that get you, that you get. Because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people, and you're going to be doing a lot of creative things with these people. I think that's really great. Or I guess, what are some of the things early in your life that help set your taste? Because that is one of the things that we've kind of zeroed in on as one of the main things that casting directors have to trade on is their taste.
Well, we have a saying in my family, there's taste and there's no taste.
Huh.
That's it.
Meaning, can you drill down on that a little? That's what it is. You either have that or you don't. You have a sense of it or you don't. But I also think in terms of casting, there's, and I'm sure many people have said this, it's somewhat intuitive. You have to, if you're really conscious of what you're doing, in some ways you have to be unconscious, when you're in a casting room, if you're just talking about casting per se. What do I always say? It's like you're the hostess of a party, but you're not on the guest list. So you have to, you just have to allow yourself to take it in. And I guess taste might be part of that. But as I said, I was from early on, that is what I heard in my,
there is just simply taste.
Mm-hmm.
And you either have that or you don't. So I just feel like, oh yeah, I have that. I don't think about it too much.
Are there things from early in life that you saw, whether it be theater or films, that stand out to you as maybe instrumental in why you like the things that you like?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
That is a perfectly valid answer too. We've had
Nope.
that a few times with people. No, just everything.
I learned how to watch people.
Hmm.
What did my mother always used to say? You can tell a lot about a person at an airport if you look at their shoes. That was something I think she did with me once. Like just weird, just things in life. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
Just being observant, maybe.
I feel like that's not a lot of people in LA are as observant as people in New York, and maybe that's because of the spread and because of the stacked nature of New York. You're kind of living on top of one another.
Try getting on the subway.
Right. And nobody here even knows that we have a subway.
Right. That's right.
Another movie of yours that I wanted to talk about is Beware the Gonzo. Directed by Brian Golubov. It's Ezra Miller's first starring feature role.
No, it is not.
Is it not?
It's not.
Not his. That's not his first starring?
No, his first starring was a movie I put him in when he was 14 years old.
I missed that.
It is called After School, and it was directed by Antonio Campos. So in fact, but that movie is what catapulted Ezra.
It is. Okay.
And not Brian's movie, actually, After School, because After School actually went to Cannes, the Cannes Film Festival. And so people started to hear about him. And it was a small kid, all young people cast. And then Brian really wanted Ezra and, got Ezra for this. So, yes.
Okay, so I missed that, but I still get to ask the question that I came up with. So this movie is actually really awesome. I really enjoyed it. It is a romantic comedy about a high school student who creates an underground newspaper. After School is something that I now need to check out. It looks really good as well. An internet-addicted prep school student captures on video camera the drug overdose of two girls.
The metaphor being the Twin Trade Towers.
Yeah.
Oh, that is the metaphor behind the whole story, which I don't know that they ever talk about, but that is. So it's how people are culpable or not culpable in life and how people deal with tragedy.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to watch that. What was it about Ezra that stood out to you as being able to handle this? Because it's a lot to carry a feature film is a lot.
I mean, really, I have to go back to After School because he walked in the room.
Please, yeah.
And I was with my associate at the time, Randy, and he walked in the room, and I don't know what we had him do. It was a while ago. And we looked at each other and we were like, okay, that's the guy. Like, we're done now. We're literally done now.
That's a good feeling, isn't it?
And he's so unique. And I'm sure people listening know who Ezra is, and they've read stuff about him, and all of it is, everything is true. Ezra is just a unique kid, and I call him a kid because I've known him since he was so young.
Yeah.
And he was that way when he was that young. It is not a persona that something may have changed in the persona because he's since become quite well known, and maybe it's protective.
Sure.
But he was always unique. So that's that.
And then to kind of fit him into these stories, I mean, you've taken chances on a lot of people, actors and directors alike, because there are quite a few first-time feature directors that you've worked with. Many of them have done shorts before, but a feature, as I've just found out, I just got through the first assembly of a feature that I just produced and starred in. Mm-hmm. It is a lot. A feature is a lot to make happen. Why do you take those chances? What because not a lot of people do. It doesn't seem to be the standard, and you do it fairly consistently through your career.
Yeah, well, it's because it's always more, I don't know, it's just more interesting. The fight is real. If it's somebody who's determined and clear and specific, it's not much of a stretch. Because I would rather work that way than with somebody who's not clear and has no voice and whose hands are tied all the time by somebody else or something else. And so, yeah, I mean, I think you have to, for me personally, I have to want to do this. The money's not good enough to just be doing it. I mean, like I said, I used to work retail. I could go, it's like, for a paycheck, there are a lot of other things you can do. Mm-hmm. So it has to be something I want to do. And so young directors sometimes, or first-time directors, or are exciting to listen to, especially when their scripts are good.
And you've got a lot of that.
I do. I think we do. And I say no a lot, too.
You do?
And yeah, I do. I actually do. Because you read something and you're like, if I'm the front person here and if I'm the one going to, I'm going to go after windmills, as it were, mm-hmm. I have to believe in whatever this is 100%. And sometimes I know that I won't be able to do that. So
you seem very self-aware in that sense, that you know where you lie. And I think that's important.
I hope so. I don't know. I don't know. It ain't paying the rent, but yeah, no. Yes, I do. I know what I know what I like to cast, mm-hmm. and in some regards, I like to watch different kinds of movies than I cast.
Really?
Like, oh yeah, like, give me I watched it like twice. People are like, you watched that twice? Oh God, it just came out on Netflix. It's some movie, but yeah, the stuff that no one would ever hire me to cast, I like to cast. Like, why not?
Are they things that you would want to cast, or is it just?
I don't know. They're goofy. They're romances. They're like, not, but they work and they're fun to watch.
Sure. I mean, I personally, I love working on super crazy, heavy drama, crying and getting in it, and mm-hmm. I watch sitcoms all the time.
Right. Yeah. That I don't do, but yes.
Well,
yeah. But I understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
So another film of yours that I was really, really excited to watch, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, was Frank and Lola. Another film that I knew nothing about going into it, except Michael Shannon and Imogen Poots are in it. They're so very good. There's a quality to their personalities, to the simplicity of the performances, fearlessness that both of them have as actors, and just, I mean, even Roseanne Arquette and Michael Nyquist, mm-hmm. And even Justin Long, who is usually like a goofy, bumbling, lovable guy. Mm-hmm. Everybody has a kind of menace to them. Mm-hmm. It is a psychosexual noir. That's all I'm going to say about it. Go watch it. And if you have seen it already, great. Written, directed by Matthew Ross. This was his first feature film. How did you end up working on Frank and Lola?
I knew you were going to come up with a question like that, and I can't quite remember. I mean, it was Killer Films, and mm-hmm. I have done a relative, up until then, I'd done several movies for them.
Yeah. And
I'm trying to think if it was another director with whom I had tried to work and never did, or let me just, I'm actually going to see, John Baker, who's a wonderful producer, mm-hmm. also. So it was probably, and Lars was on it, right? So it was a bunch of guys, Jay Van Hoy, people who I had worked for or who I had wanted to work for, and I think that's how it came about. And then Matthew was lovely to work with, and I think I did his last movie. I don't know if he's done one since, but we did another one together.
So this is, you cast this alongside Matthew LaSalle.
I think we had to do a few people, some day players, but they had to come out of LA.
Oh, okay.
So Matthew did some help on that.
Okay.
I've done a few things with Matthew.
Yeah, you have.
I adore him.
And we're trying to book him on the show for sure.
Yeah.
You did Chronic with him. You did Frank and Lola. You did Imperium. How does that relationship work with you and another casting director that you work with multiple times? Because it sounds like he's working one coast, you're working the other coast to kind of bring a project together.
It is a bit like that.
Yeah.
You know, if we know, like Chronic came and at one point, I can't remember, I think it was supposed to shoot in New York, and this was a director with whom I really desperately wanted to work with. And so we figured out, I think I went to Matthew with it and I said, will you help me with this? But, and I got to cast in LA. I mean, I did go to LA and cast it with Matthew, but I needed his help and in some respects guidance. So I think, that's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Just, we have a good time together, so it works.
How did you two best work together, or how can a casting director better work with another casting director on a project?
I'd be curious how he answers this, but I think that
I'll ask this one to him too.
But I think if you choose to work with another casting director, it's because you need them, and sometimes somebody is better at doing a hardcore business stance, if that's makes any sense.
Yeah.
Someone else might be just better in the studio with actors, and different casting people bring different things. You can bring both of those things, but when you're working with somebody, you kind of have to, you sort of do divide it a little bit. I can, I guess, yeah, I mean, each one of us does something really well. And so when you combine the two, you get a good, I don't know what, I hate to call it a product, but you get something good out of it. Does that make, yeah.
Yeah. So making up for, and I don't use this in the negative sense, but for the deficiencies of one another, being able to lean on one another because one person has more experience doing X.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And also ideas. If you're sitting around getting ideas, it's always better to be with somebody else, because you're just ahead. And to be able to get ideas with other people, I think is fantastic. Because
go ahead, please.
No, go ahead. No.
Well, I was just curious how important a shared sense of taste is in that sense.
I guess it's important, but honestly, it's also just expands it. Like somebody read me a list that they had made a while ago, and they were like, "Isn't it a great list or something?" And I was like, "What? I don't even know 80% of I literally don't even know what you just read me."
Uh-huh.
And I'm trying to remember who was on it. I forget who it was, but there was a name, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. Like, is that a person? Like, that's a one word? What is that? And so, and then when I went and did my homework, it was like, oh my God, what a genius idea for this thing that you're doing. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that, we don't all know, we all have access to the same people. Here's another thing. Casting directors, we all have access to the same stuff.
Uh-huh.
There's a Portuguese, or there's a Portuguese actress who's 18 who's done an amazing movie when she was a teenager. There's if you go and watch a Romanian movie, there's a giant menu of amazing actors. But it's how you choose to do that, to either try to get those people, to try to put them on a list, or to ignore them altogether. Mm-hmm. I was just looking at something on IMDb earlier today, and I can't remember what it was, but I had watched some television show, and there was an Israeli actor on it, and I was like, that kid is a movie star. And then he gets blown up like 3 episodes in but he's in this TV show now. And I was like, that casting director had the wherewithal to watch the same thing I did and put that guy on a list. I'm assuming that's what happened. I don't think that guy just showed up from Israel on his own, but maybe he did. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does. And it's just intuition that you see these things. There's no real way to teach this either. It is only intuition and being around it.
Yes, I agree with that. I think you can teach someone the ins and outs. You can help someone younger by leading them towards what to watch, but you can't make them like it,
Yeah.
So yeah.
We're nearing an hour. We're probably about 10 minutes away or so. I would love to talk about First Reformed.
Yeah.
I watched this movie yesterday.
Oh my God, yeah.
I was really excited to watch it when it first came out, but I've been doing this show, so I don't get to choose what I watch. I only watch whatever casting director stuff is coming up. I got a chance to work with Mr. Hawk a little while back in a Western, and it was incredible just being around him to see him work. He was opposite of Dane DeHaan in a movie about Billy the Kid.
Oh.
And he talked a little bit about this film on the set, or about the idea of this film. Written and directed by Paul Schrader, who is known for writing Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, and Affliction. It's about a minister of a small congregation in upstate New York who grapples with mounting despair brought on by a tragedy, worldly concerns, and a very tormented past. It stars Ethan Hawke, Amanda Seyfried, Cedric Kyles, otherwise known as Cedric the Entertainer, Victoria Hill, and Philip Ettinger. It is a true Paul Schrader film in his form. I didn't really know what to expect and was taken on a really wonderful and at times very intense journey. You're working with Paul Schrader, who is a true master, one of the most iconic writers. We've already established that you like really good writing. What brought you into this project?
I had been contacted several years ago by some other people to work on an internet, what are those things called?
Like a web series?
Yes. Mm-hmm. That Paul Schrader had written, and I can't remember if he was going to direct it, but he was producing it. Mm-hmm. And so I cast the entire thing, and then I cast a bulk of it, and then it never happened. And I had a really lovely experience. I mean, like you said, I was working for a master. So the whole thing for me was like going to grad school. Mm-hmm. It's just, I'm not going to repeat anything that came out of his mouth, but it was literally like going to college. It was, he would just say, yeah, the other day I was, and it was like, oh my God, you just, just talking about people he knew and his experiences. So it was great for me, and everybody left on good terms. And I think my name came up when he had this movie to make. And I think that's how it happened.
Okay.
So I was thrilled to be able to do it again. Although he was not in the studio as much on this one, but I think by that point I felt like I knew, his work. You kind of know where he lives.
Yeah. Well, how much does a man with that much intimate knowledge of the script, because he wrote the script, you said it took him a decade or so to write the script or to actually get it out. How does that, and coupled on top of him being this master, how does he approach casting?
Realistically, he also, that's in my experience. Mm-hmm. And then every now and then, I have to say his great idea was Cedric the Entertainer. And that was his idea. And he said, why wouldn't he take this? Like, he'd be crazy not to take this part. And the rest of us are, and he was right, so knew what he wanted, and we were able to get it for him. Phil Ettinger was one of many people who auditioned, and again, Phil's work is, he's somebody who we know, but his audition was unbelievable, and he, I can't speak for Phil, but it felt like he was just connected to the material from the get-go. That he would get to a word or get to a place, and he would go where he needed to go, not because he'd worked so hard on it, but because it affected him. He was paying attention to the words, for lack of a better way to say it.
Is that rare?
It doesn't happen a lot. No, so I think we knew right away, my office, and honestly, I think Mr. Schrader knew as well, and then I think there became, we got what we wanted. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't happen overnight.
Well, it is a really beautiful film and a beautifully formed cast. Everybody works so well together. What I really love about what you've just said, though, about him finding Cedric the Entertainer, is one of the interviews that I read of Mr. Schrader's in Slash Film is he actually mentions you, which is, I took note of it because it is rare that filmmakers credit casting directors for...
mentions me.
Yeah.
We did.
And he telling the story of, I remember the casting person coming to me, what is this person like? And he's sort of like Steve Harvey. And she came back to me and said, what about Cedric? So you're both crediting one another, which I think is kind of beautiful. Because they're...
I did that, but okay.
there's just a selfless nature in that, and in this moment that I want to point out because I think it is noteworthy. One, for a filmmaker to even mention the casting people is rare, but I just really love this moment, so I'm sitting in it.
Okay.
I have a few other films that I would love to talk to you about. Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene.
My babies.
Shredded me. That movie is wonderful. Written and directed by Sean Durkin. His first feature film as a director. It stars Elizabeth Olsen, Sarah Paulson, John Hawkes, a slew of faces that you would recognize now. This is Julia Garner's first film.
Yes.
She's on Ozark. If you don't know who she is, you should. It is about Martha, played by Elizabeth Olsen, who tries to assimilate back into society after escaping a cult. But it's just the first 2 weeks of being out, so it kind of zooms in to this very different world for Martha.
Yes.
Wouldn't you need someone to carry a film like this in such a huge emotional span, which a lot of your films that I've seen do? They deal with highly emotional, very, very deeply embedded feelings. What kind of rarity is it to actually find an actor that can not just handle the work, but handle the weight of a film?
You mean to find someone who other people don't know?
That other people don't know, but just in general, in the industry itself, being able to find that lead that can do what Elizabeth Olsen did in this movie, or that Sarah Paulson is capable, or like there is a tier of capability, and I'm curious at the scope of that tier. Does that make sense, or am I just talking in circles here?
I think so. I think there are two things at play. One is that you have to be if you're really doing movies, so you have to think of it, or at least I try to think of it in terms of a giant screen. And I know that isn't how it is anymore, but that's how I have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is, how does that person hold that kind of screen? And that's not necessarily something that they're in control of. So there's that element.
What do you mean by how they hold that screen, though?
It's what the camera sees.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
And some people hold a giant screen, and in my opinion, other people hold a small screen. So they can hold, something that's the size of your computer, but if you put that same face on a giant screen, it may not, their presence may not be the same.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of it. And the other part of it is just talent. And certainly with Elizabeth, she came in and auditioned. And I think that, if I'm remembering correctly, she came in for something else, and we loved her. She was still in school, and she didn't get that. We actually, I don't know if she knows this, and we tried desperately to get her that other job, and she didn't get it. And so we remembered her for this, as did her agents. And she holds the screen. That character is so quixotic and secretive. Yeah. And she held the screen. I thought she did lovely work. And also she comes with, to be honest, there is a bit of baggage there. And so you think you know what you're getting, but you're not getting that. Mm-hmm. And for me personally, I felt it fed into the story. Does that make sense?
It does. So did you realize that beforehand, like as you were doing the casting? Yeah?
Yeah. But yeah, I think, yes, I did. I mean, I do. Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly not, I'm talking business, not business wise, but I'm talking very specifically. And with Sarah Paulson, she had a huge, I think she had large television presence. And randomly, I saw her in a play in New York. And that was for me when I was like, oh, this is a real divine act. This is an actress.
Yeah.
And that's how I think that came about.
Well, this one, I truly adore this cast. It is.
Yeah, me too.
It is a really incredible ensemble of a cast.
It is truly one of my favorites of all time. It's up there. And I love Sean Durkin, and we just cast another movie for him. So there's one there. There's one out there, and hopefully there will be more. We'll see.
Well, and you won an Artios for this as well, right? 2012 for casting for a low budget feature. And you also won last year for Beach Rats.
Yes.
You don't seem like somebody who lives off of the accolades.
Not so much.
But I am curious, what does that mean for you to be recognized by the community of casting?
I think we would all say the same thing. I think it's I think it's lovely. I think it's lovely when we all recognize each other's work. And sometimes you can really see you can watch something as a casting director, and you absolutely know that the casting director had everything to do with it. And you can tell, you can literally tell because of who's in it and how it's come to, we know actors. It's hard to watch American movies because we know them all. But sometimes you can see how a cast was built. So I guess it's a nice feeling. It's also just fun to recognize it in other people's work, and I'm not trying to be whatever, but recognizing it is great in each other.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, based around the conversation that we had even before we started recording, that is, I do think it is important to recognize those especially those movies when you can tell, because you're right, there are certain ensembles, there are certain movies that really come together with a cast that you're like, the casting was so important in this film that without the casting director having done what they did, it would not exist. It wouldn't be good. It would be a much different thing. So I'm glad to hear that more and more of that is happening, and hopefully we will see more of it happen in the future.
How nice.
Unfortunately, we have reached our hour. I have multiple other films that I would like to talk to you about. We didn't even talk about Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and I've got.
Oh my God!
You know what? We're gonna go over. We're gonna talk about Hedwig and the Angry Inch. It is a story of a transgender punk rock girl from East Berlin tours the U.S. with her band as she tells her life story and follows the former lover bandmate who stole her songs. It was first produced off-Broadway, then on the West End. It landed on film in 2001, starring John Cameron Mitchell, Andrea Martin, Michael Pitt, and Miriam Shore. It was winner of the Audience Award at Sundance. Another film, another project before its time, I think. The movie was written and directed by the guy who played Hedwig, John Cameron Mitchell, after he had been doing Hedwig on the stage for a while. And I'm curious, with that level of involvement and devotion to this story, I imagine casting it would have been wildly different from a lot of other projects. What was that involvement like?
I love John. My anecdote to all of it is, of course, I knew John as a young actor. You know, we all know each other and done a lot of theater, and I can remember this very specifically. I think he probably remembers it too. He was getting into an elevator one day, and he went, Susan, I just wrote this show about a drag queen, and I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna do it downtown or some such. And I went, that's so sweet, John. Bye, and the door closed, and the rest is history. So. Doing casting for John, I mean, those are two different conversations. Casting for John is an extraordinary experience. He loves actors, and so do I. So I've worked for him twice and have had great experiences both times. He's very specific, and he knows how to communicate, and I can't say it's easy because it was exhausting, but it was also, look, all you have to do is watch the movie and you see, you can do what you need to see. I don't know if I answered anything.
I think you absolutely did. What is the difference between this kind of project that has already found its feet on the stage?
Well, it was off Broadway. It certainly wasn't Broadway. So it found its feet, but it was still sort of this funky in a weird hotel, kind of in this like weird, if I remember correctly, it's sort of this weird space. The hotel has since been renovated and it's fancy now. So it was all a little dirty, So it had a following here, but I'm not so sure. The show is very different from the movie. So the movie, brought that text, to visually to life.
Yeah.
So we had to cast people that aren't necessarily in the musical, if that makes sense.
It does. I mean,
Miriam Shore was in the show, and she reprised her role.
Okay.
I'm trying to see.
One person of note is Michael Pitt, who would have been a little relative unknown at the time. And
he was very unknown.
And,
yes.
Although this is a musical, he doesn't sing. All the songs are him lip singing to vocals of the man who wrote the music, Stephen Trask.
Yes.
What cemented this part for him, being in a musical, not singing?
I don't think he was ever meant to sing.
Okay.
I think it was the quality of the person. And I had seen him in a show at New York Theater Workshop called The Trestle at Pope Lick Creek or something like that. And it was pretty much a two-hander, and he was a kid. I mean, I think he was 16 or something. Yeah. And that's how he, we brought him in and auditioned him. I think he was the first person I brought in, and then we saw like 90 other people, and then it was like, oh yeah, it's that guy. Right. Something like that.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's a really incredible film, and an incredible story that, I hope continues to make its rounds. I know you still see it pop up here at the Pantages every now and again, or
it has I think it has a new, they've done something to it. It has I know it's playing because I don't really know why, but I know it's out there again.
Okay. This has been an absolute pleasure, Susan. I've really enjoyed going through your career. We still have more to talk about, so we're probably going to have to do another episode sometime in the near future.
All right. Thank you.
We really hope that you have enjoyed this episode of Placing Faces. Do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, love, heart, thumbs up, and share this episode. I love you. Maria Perry, still the best. Thank you for everything. Now a quick word from Miss Maria.
Hi, I'm Maria Perry, the producer of Placing Faces, and I'm just popping in to let you know that you can now find and support Placing Faces on Patreon. This podcast is a labor of love, and that means our production cycles are slower than we'd like when our day jobs get in the way. We're hoping to be able to get one more person involved and make the editing process a little quicker. And when you support us, you can join the community that we're building. Find out who we'll be talking to next, submit questions, and vote in polls about upcoming episodes. So find us on Patreon or check our website for a link at
Placing Faces is powered by Collaborator.com, a media production service connecting media professionals to companies, brands, and agencies, allowing you to scale your production based on your needs, connecting companies and creatives seamlessly. We'd also like to thank our partners at the Casting Society of America. The CSA is a hub of information about this branch of the film industry. To learn more about the Society and what it takes to get into casting, visit castingsociety.com. Thank you all so much for listening, and until next time, be well.